Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, again. Welcome to our class from the week 13. We're almost finished on this semester. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about prototypes development, and so on. We're going to discuss a little bit about the vocabulary used on it while using the vocabulary. But first of all, I like to do a poll. So I'm going to ask you a question, which is starting right now. You're supposed to be able to see the question and be able to vote. So this is an interaction. There is a poll going on. Hay una pregunta que deben de ver por ahí aquí en su Zoom. You're supposed to answer it. I only have one answer, two answers. Do you know what a prototype is? Just let me know if you know, yes or no. So far, only two of you have answered. Go and look for the question, please. 4 people have answered, 5 people have answered, 7 people, 8, 9, that's good. I'm taking a look at the poll right now. 9, there's more people in this group. There is 17 students, so you need to keep on working on it. Only 10 people have answered, now it's 11. Okay, do you know what a prototype is? And people is telling me that, yes, you do know what a prototype is. Okay, that's interesting. 12 people have answered. Is there more people here? Where is the people? 12. So five people have not answered. Well, actually now it's 4. I have 13 answered. And so far, everyone is saying here that you already know what a prototype is. Where is the other 4 people? Can you please finish answering it? I'm gonna finish this in 30 seconds. I'm only gonna take 2 minutes and 30 seconds more. There is the need for 4 more people. Where are you? Hello? Do you know what a prototype is? Let's see the poll. Only 13 people. All right, 10 more seconds. And if you are not voting, you're out of the poll. 76% of the people have voted, so which is a good number. 2 more seconds, 1 second, and finish. We'll finish the poll, and now we'll see. I'm gonna share the results. So by now, you're supposed to be able to see the results, and everybody said that, yes, you do know what the prototype is, which is great, because we're going to be on the same page. That's awesome. Congratulations on that. But let's see. Let's get more serious about it and start talking about the prototype development. So for that, we're gonna use a PowerPoint presentation, like the usual way to go in one of these classes. And we're going to use it as a guidance to be able to talk a little bit more about this prototype. All right, so this is part of the unit number 3 that we have been working on it. This unit is about business pitches. And right now it's time to talk about prototype development. Okay, so let's go and see what it is. First of all, as usual, we're going to define what a prototype is. So far, you all, or well, the majority of you, it was 76% of your votes mentioned that you know what a prototype is. Let's see if it is for real. We're going to discuss a little more about the benefits, and we will say about categories that there are for prototypes, because yes, there exist different types of prototypes, but what is more important is what you can see on these diagrams on the left, that we're going to talk about the development process, which is that's where we want to go, because we are engineers, and engineers do design, and engineers do testing. So we need to go on that round and talk about the prototype design, all right? And then once we finish on that one, we're gonna talk about the pitch and presentation of ideas using prototypes for your clients and the stakeholders, because this is business. Remember that this unit is called business pitches. So we want to present this as a pitch. And that's how we want to go and work for it. So remember in mind that you said 76% of you guys voted and said that you already know what a prototype is. Let's see the definition and find out if you knew the real definition and the real use, and of course the benefits of a prototype. Let's go over there and move on to the next slide. So that question, the actual question is, what is a prototype? So we have two different definitions. One is from Twinkle. It's a place that defines about design. And the other definition is from BizFluent, and this is from David Widmark, a person who is dedicated to investigate and write about prototypes. Okay, so basically what they're saying is that a prototype is a test. Well, that's fine. If they want to define it in that way, it might be a test, but actually a prototype is not just a test. It comes from a model of a product or a technology from which improvements, upgrades, or fundamental changes can be made. So for example, when we want to make changes to a product that we already have, we can work with a prototype. A prototype can save us a lot of money. A prototype gives us the chance to prove that the new changes or the new product, it's worth it. So it's better to use prototypes. In areas such as software technology, prototypes are particularly useful in identifying errors, which will later harm the product if not resolved at an early stage. But a simpler way to say it is a prototype is a draft of a product that gives you the ability to explore the idea and demonstrate features before investing in the product's complete development. So it's actually, sometimes it's just a scale of the product, which is what we are watching over here. This is a scale of a Boeing. It's not, Boeing is a company about airplanes. That's what they're designed, but they're usually just for commercial airplanes. But this was a prototype from Boeing for cargo without human beings over there, just for cargo, for shipping cargo. So normally it's a scale, but it could also be the actual size, like this example over here on the right. It is about to explore the idea and demonstrate features before investing. That's what it is, a prototype is. A prototype can range from a detailed drawing with pen and paper to a fully working version of the product. And that's what we're going to see in this class today. All right, so let's move forward. Next slide. Then we have, as engineers in industry, there is a side of industry that it's only dedicated for prototypes, and it's called prototype engineering. So several companies, especially big international companies, they do rely on prototype engineering. Why? Because they do want to keep investigating. Some of this is, of course, is part of the research and development from a company. Research and development is widely used whenever you want to keep launching new products. And part of it will be the prototype engineering. Then, what is this type of engineering? It goes beyond sketches. So it's not just the drawing of it or physical mock-ups. It creates a working proof of concept. That's what you're seeing on these pictures that I selected over here. So it creates proof of concept of the product. It usually is done in phases, of course, because prototypes can range from an assembly of spare parts or handmade components to a precise rendering of the final product. So it actually takes big investment, but it's better to invest at early stages to prove that the product works before even going to the customer, because it can save you money, and of course it can prove that you're going to have a big market for it. Well, of course, hopefully we're talking about having a market, right? Okay, any questions now? No, okay.
Not yet.
Good, thank you, Connie. So with that said, since prototypes are an example, a scale, or a proof, a way to prove that something works, then it should have the benefits, okay? So it has numerous benefits. Some of them are listed in here. So let's see a little bit about them. Some of the benefits include ensuring a two-way dialogue between consumer and developer. So how do we do that at an early stage? Well, usually that's when we involve the market. So that's market involvement. So usually we can do some testing on the market. We could do some focus groups. And usually this is to get us feedback. That's what we're looking for. We're looking to get feedback from the former and curious from the later, hence in the process. So we want to get information from these people over here, the consumer. A consumer is a synonym of client, okay? So second benefit, giving developers the chance to spot errors at an early stage and rectify them before they cause problems in the later stages of design. So it's definitely a benefit. You can find errors before it goes to production. Very good, isn't it? Another point of benefit will be being able to look at the aesthetics of the product and see whether any changes can be made to make it more appealable to consumers. That's another thing that it's very interesting and important when you are launching a product. If it is just a simple change or if it is a new or total new product. The aesthetics are very important. Allowing practical experimentation to take place while there is a scope to make fundamental changes to the product. We can do practical experimentation, so that depends on the type of product. For example, whenever you have a product that is related to technology, of course you want to have a practical experimentation on that one, because in order to produce them, you're going to have a big series of production. So you don't want to just produce it and then have a lot of errors on it. So it allows to experiment with it. And last but not least, remember that these are just a few of the benefits that I'm listing over here. This is about boosting morale and productivity for developers who can use the model as a reference point and something to work towards. So I just want to take the time to talk a little bit about what last year we ended up having prototype, right, in this part, prototypes benefits for the COVID-19 vaccine. They were experimenting a year ago. They started experimenting and seeing if it was a good model. And then after they find the final stages on it, they still have to go and do practical experimentation. And it was all a prototype before even it was launched. So it was launched late October for several of those brands that we know already. But they had to go to prototype tests. So we, the people, we have a big, huge benefit that we can trust on those products by now, just because they were prototypes before. That's an awesome thing to have, prototypes. Great. Okay, so we continue with this. We talk about benefits, and now we're going to talk about the prototype categories. Since there are different types of prototypes, we can categorize them. First of all, I'm going to show you just a very simple category of 3 points. And then I'm going to be describing a little bit farther from it with those 3 points that are actually from a cycle for the prototype. I'm going to be extending them to be 5 of them. And let's discuss them. So, I think that I used first those ones. Okay, so it was not 3, I'm using 4, pardon me. All right, so number 1 will be, oh, no. I just got a little confused on the information over here. So I'm presenting a category of 4, then I'm going to talk about 3 of them, 3 of the parts for the development, and then 5 parts for the development of it. So just getting rid of the confusion that I just created. So let's just put it away and let's talk about the categories from it. So according to the concept and the definition of designing and using a prototype, we can describe them as being 4 different, even though if we take a look at the definition of them, number 1 and number 4 are almost the same, but there's a little bit of difference in between. Let's see what it is. So when we talk about a working prototype, the number 1 is a development that represents nearly all of the features and functionality of the final product, but it might not be like exactly the same as the final product. Still, it's a little bit of different. Then there is another one that is called a visual prototype. It represents the shape, dimensions, and appearance of the conceptual design, but it's not intended to depict the functionality of the final product. It's only for visual. It's only something that sometimes it could also be the demo. You can actually have a 3D part of the product, but it will only be for seeing it, not actually for testing it, if it works or not. And most of the time, it's usually a drawing for the visual prototype. And then there is something more interesting, the categories for 3 and 4. Number 3 of the categories for a prototype will be user experience prototype. It is developed such that it represents enough details of the final prototype that are supposed to be used for further research work being carried out. So if this can be taken to the user, then that's when we talk about the development of prototypes. These will go for testing, probando. Okay. So the other one, which is a functional prototype, it's kind of like similar to, like I said, it will be a working prototype and it's also ready for user experience. But what's the difference with it? This might be created with a different technique and different scale from the actual prototype. What does that mean? Okay, when we talk about being functional, most of the time is the actual scale, and it could include as much as possible similar or the actual materials. That you're supposed to be using for the final product. And that's why it's called the functional prototype, because it is so similar or very, very similar to the actual product, which is very interesting. So according to the different type of prototypes, that's why we can categorize them. And with that said, talking about the categories, now we're going to talk about the development of the prototype, which is more interesting. When we started talking about this class, when I said or mentioned the outline, I mentioned that we were going to have the most important part as that development of the prototype, which is called the development process. What you are actually seeing on this slide over here is a cycle, the prototype cycle, which implies that we start with an analysis and design. We need to develop, demonstrate, refine. So it goes through the cycle. And once we have a type of prototype, which could be in one of those 4 categories that we just talked about, we do testing, and of course, we keep the development of it. So let's see what this cycle is about. Like I said before, we were going to mention about 3 different parts of the process. And this is more general way to describe the process. And then we're going to go away and talk about 5 steps of the process, which will be included as 6th step of the process, which is the actual launching of the product. But let's go step by step. The first steps here are for the conceptual design. And the first part will be about evaluating and testing the design, which if we read about it, it is about creating the prototype. We need to evaluate it in real world conditions, so the evaluation of different parts can be done. So remember that we are saying the development process in a very general way. And after these 3 points, we're gonna go through those 5 to 6 different points. So we're talking about the cycle here. When we develop, we demonstrate, and we refine. And we keep going on and on and on until the design is ready to test, and until this test can be agreed, then we keep going to that development. So we check the conditions and evaluate. It enables the manufacturer, whoever is working on this, to determine which part of the design needs to be discarded or revised, that on paper wherein possible. The manufacturer is also able to test the product in real world conditions along with evaluation before going into the production phase. I'm going to explain a little bit more about this in the next few slides. Let's see the number 2, for instance. Continuing with this, the development cycle. I'm just trying to close down the little pen that I'm using, because if not, I cannot keep going farther. Okay, so number 2 will be about determination of production costs and issues. Very important. It's also part of the prototype development process, because if you don't know about the costs, then you cannot really plan about the new product or the changes on the product. So before actual production enables the manufacturer to take a glimpse and determine whether the production process needs any changes or not. This keeps the cost to a minimum. Any difficulty in the production process can be determined, which enables the manufacturer to choose the optimal method of production that will cost him less and is error-free. So this is about being cost effective. All right. So let's move on to number 3, which is the sale of the product. And that's where the process actually ends up. Remember that we're talking about the general process right now. So a prototype will attract more customers rather than conceptual design. If you only show a picture or a product that is only on the outside, it doesn't give you the all of the benefits instead of just taking the actual product to the people and test it. It's far easier to sell a product. It's far easier to sell it with a prototype as compared to conceptual design, as it is difficult to explain the design to every customer. So over here, you will think about like, hey, we're talking about sale of the product. Is this the final product? No, not really. We are still talking about the prototype. But or a stage of having a prototype should allow you to have a product which is close to the same as the actual product, and you can actually sell it and you can get more feedback from the customers so that you can get the final saying from your customers, from your stakeholders, and also from your production plan. Because if you are going to be producing hundreds of these products or thousands or millions of them, you need to make sure that you have a good option for your product. So it enables the manufacturers to edit any part of the design according to the customer, which is not possible once the product is developed. Do many companies use a prototype, a development process? Of course. Like I said before, it's cost effective. It saves money. Well, one of the main reasons for it, but it's not just that. It saves time. It helps us create a better product, and it allows us to actually have a market, to be sure that we do have a market. So, like I said, those were 3 general ways to describe the development process, but it is a better way to describe that with these 5 different stages and including the 6th one, which will be the mature product. So let's go through all of them. We're going to take them into account and a little bit more. This is from the definition of prototype development from David Whitmark. I presented some information from him before. So the development process, a little more detail about this. The appearance model is the first part, which might be a few designs. This is the visual part of it. Proof of concept, an assembly of components to demonstrate how the product will work. Resembles the final product, but it's not the final product. But things become more interesting once you go to alpha prototype and beta prototype, because alpha prototype, it's kind of like the finally craft, but early version of the product. You're ready to test it, but still has some errors, some mistakes, but it's way more interesting once you go to the alpha prototype, because you can test it already. But the beta prototype has a little bit different. The beta prototype is an enhanced version, meaning of a better version from the alpha prototype. And it resembles how the final product will look and work. And it gets way, way interesting over here. A lot of companies get people to test at this point for the beta prototype. And then once you have the answers from that one, you have the pilot production. Yes, it's good and it's very interesting to have a production for a proof. It's a limited run using normal production equipment to be used for fine-tuning of the product and production procedures. Usually goes like to the hundreds and number of products to see if the production line can actually run and if it will actually work. And finally, a mature product, which is, oops, I went away with my pen, which is the final version of the product. This is what we want to do. We want to get to the mature of the product, but we have to go to different stages. Yes. Hopefully when you had known this when you were in your 3rd and 4th semester with Professor Christian, when you used to have those studies of how to run a line and developing a new product. Hopefully you tested with prototypes, but I know that you did test only the production line, and that's why you ended up with a lot of errors, and then you have to go back and you spend a lot of money on raw materials and so on. But you learned the lesson. So by now you're supposed to know a little bit more about that. Okay, all right. So let's go and describe these 5 different stages a little more. Let's see. From the number 1, which was the appearance model, which this could be images or it could be a 3-dimensional model of it. It could be printed from a 3D printer. It could be builded with cardboard or with wood. Remember that the appearance model is just to see how it's going to look, but it helps us to evaluate things like the size, the color, and of course, the visual effects. This can be used for fundraising and for developing interest in the product from a company's board or potential investors. Whenever you're looking for potential investors for the new product, you could have, or you could start raising money or investors with just an appearance model. It will be better to have the alpha prototype or the beta prototype in order to get their attention, but you can start since these early stages as the appearance model. Second one was proof of concept prototype, which is a quick and dirty assembly of the product. Yeah, it's kind of close to the final product. It might look like the product or it might not look like the product, but it could have the functionality of it. So it gives us a feasibility of the idea to evaluate performance. So like the example that you are seeing over here, they're probably taking a look at something from a virtual reality, and they are testing the prototype from the concept of that virtual reality. And the most important part of this from the early stages is about getting data. First, data to analyze and to do more changes and get ready for those alpha prototypes. And then, of course, what is going to deal or to go towards the beta prototype. Designers use this prototype to consider risks and determine which components are needed at the final version. This can include, of course, testing the user interface or evaluating specific technical components, primarily used for internal development. It can also be used to present to investors to prove the concept works. So again, like the other stage, which was only for visual, it can also be used for proof for investors, for potential investors. And you could also do testings, but the testings become more interesting once we go to the alpha prototype and the beta prototype. So let's see the definition for the alpha prototype. It usually resembles the finished product, and works much the same of the finished product or on how it is intended to be working. What you're seeing over here, it's from a car show, which is only for displayed. And usually on these displays, they're only showing prototypes. And what they do over here is they try to gather information from the customers. The customers can even test drive those cars. And the important part of it is to get the feedback from the customer. Of course, it's used for testing to evaluate design flows and evaluate the appearance of the product. So it's sometimes done with, the testing is sometimes done with this prototype. Developing this prototype is more expensive than the previous version. Why? Because now here with alpha and beta prototypes, you are supposed to be working with similar materials. and similar size, and especially with products that are as big as cars or airplanes or things like are kind of big and they use a lot of equipment and materials, it becomes expensive. But it is very good to have this type of version as a prototype because it starts giving you the actual feedback, the real feedback that you can input into your design and of course for the production of it. This one, since it's more expensive and it actually takes a lot of time, it could take like months to actually build an alpha prototype. So what's the difference with the beta prototype? If we have the alpha, okay, the beta comes after the alpha prototype. And this one is a refined version of what you had before, which was the alpha prototype. This is an approximation to the final product, like 90 or a little more % of the actual product. It should be very, very close to the final product. But even though you have a working product, which might be good and so on, you still are going to have changes. That's why it still is called a prototype, because it's built to see if it has any flaws or mistakes, or if you can actually do some changes to better the product. I actually wanted to include these pictures on the right. The pictures, this one, number 1, I'm gonna say that this is number 1 and this one is number 2. Number 1 and 2, I wanted to include it because this is so used for gaming, the gaming development. That's a huge industry around the world, especially now that everybody can have a lot of games in their mobile devices. That's way very important. And of course, there is a different type of devices that you can just see it in front of either a computer or a television and keep playing those with consoles. But okay, in the gaming design, in the gaming development, beta prototype is the way to go. This beta prototype helps them to see if their launching process is capable. If the process can be capable, if the memory is enough, if the different devices can hold it, but most important, they do check if their equipment is able to keep either 10, hundreds, and even thousands of players at the same time, because that for gaming is critical. It takes a lot of planning to be able to go from just 10 gamers to thousands of them. And if it goes to millions, it's even a bigger problem because it can crash the system. So that's why they need to do the beta prototype testing. Okay, just to let you know about that. I believe that that's interesting, and I wanted to share the information with you. So,
Professor,
yes, go ahead, Gilberto.
In fact, there is a job testing video game prototype, and it is very well paid.
A joke?
Job.
Oh, yeah. Now I get it. I get your idea. A job for testing prototype. Yeah, you're right. You're so right. There's a lot of people actually, and of course nowadays that almost everyone is able to get some equipment at home. So that's an actual job. And yes, like Gilberto is saying, it pays a lot of money. And what you do is you just test the game. They send you the new prototypes, and what you have to do is play with everything, go here and there and see if it crashes. If it crashes, pardon me, the pronunciation was wrong. if it crashes or if there is any flaw, if it's okay or not, if the movement is good or not. So these people is actually, not everyone can do it, actually. They are professionals on these type of things. Yes, Gilberto, you are so right. It's so true. That's an actual job. And if any one of you is interested in that, well, you can just contact the companies. They do hold applications like any other company, but you have to be an expert in gaming. So yeah. So it's usually made by the production department rather than the design department. So it's once the design finishes the prototype, the production has to launch this one, and it's used to produce the final version, of course. Several beta prototypes may be made for user testing or clinical trials. Like what we said before, it was done also for the COVID-19 vaccine. Yes. It is with the beta prototype, the production test and protocols are documented as the product is made and assembled. Changes to the beta prototype usually involve minor tweaks, just very minor different things than major changes. It's usually just minor things that could be like, for example, for a car, could be just that with the machinery that you have to be able to build it. So it might not be able to build, oh, I have to use a different color because this is red. And it might be like a little bit shorter, like millimeters. But millimeters is a big difference in using machinery. So you have to do the changes because you have to adapt it to production. So yes, still it's very close to the final product, but it's different from the final product. Yes, I find out that beta prototype is really interesting and very good. So once you finish with that one, once you finish with the beta prototype testing, most important part will be to do a pilot production. Pilot production is not the final production. You need to test if your manufacturing it's capable for doing that. So that goes to like the 100 units. You need to see if you can produce it. And then you check for times. You check all of those things that you learn with Professor Christian and Ryan and last semester with Professor Penelope for the manufacturing processes and of course for the study of work. So those are taken into account into the pilot production. You do need to go and analyze how the production line runs and take some data from it, analyze it, and see, are you ready for that? Yes. Are you not ready? Do you have any other problems happening? Good, very good way to change things before you start with the mature product. Because the mature product, after all the issues have been resolved, that's the final way to go. You go and complete and produce. You're ready to produce the final product after you do the testing of the pilot. So now you can release the product to the market. Now you're ready to keep just selling and receive the money. That's the final way to go. And that's what I was using this drawing for. You do some experimentation to design. You do the testing. You have the alpha, beta prototypes. Now you're ready for the pilot production. You can demonstrate how it works in between. And of course, at the end, you're ready to go. Keep the market. Great timing, right? All right. So now that we talk about these stages for the development process, we can talk a little bit about differences between the prototype and the actual product. Like what you're seeing on this figure, on this picture, you're supposed to be seeing a car right now, but it's not just a simple car. this is the Tesla Model 3. It was launched in 2017. And well, I used this example because there was information that I could be used when I was doing my research for this class. So, and actually for engineers, we do take a lot of interest in machines, and especially in cars. Well, being an engineer is about being an observant and asking questions and want to know the truth and want to know how the machines work. And of course, how do the cars work. And this is the, like I was saying, this is the Tesla Model 3, which was launched in 2017. But for the alpha prototype, they used this one that you see over here. And as you can see, just by looking at the dimensions, the actual product, this is the final product. This was actually bought by Elon Musk. There's a lot of articles that talk about it because that was the first Tesla car that was paid in cash full. Well, that's extra information, but we're talking about the prototypes here. So the actual and final product, you can see it here, the final product or actual product down here. And you can see that there are differences in dimensions. There are differences in color. So basically it's like the appearance, the final appearance is a little slightly different, but not too much. Because if you take a look, a very close look at what the prototype was and at the final product, they're not that different from. So why do we have differences? Let's take a look at the points down here. A prototype may differ the actual product in terms of the materials used, the machining processes, and the appearance. Why? Basically, because I mentioned this before, but I want to put down the point. Because the materials used for the final product are expensive. And of course, it's difficult to fabricate. So you should better do a prototype. It saves you time and money. The difference in the material may change the appearance and finishing of the final product as compared to the prototype. Yeah, because this one was only one or two or three different prototypes that they built, but it was not the final product. Once you go and start production, you need to work in the real plant, not just for one car, but for several of them. Once you produce in series, the things are different. Final products often are to be produced in large numbers, so the manufacturing process may differ, where the final product is often developed by some mass production method, which is cost-effective and time-saving. So you need to go and see, yes, there are going to be changes, but they have to be cost-effective. And of course, time-saving. Fabrication processes of final product might be complex. So the prototype is often produced using some simple technique. This also may lead to a difference in the appearance of the final product and prototype. If you want to read more about this, you can just go and click on these links below over here. Actually, this guy, Daryl Etherington, he wrote a few articles about this, the Tesla Model 3 and how it was made at the end and the final version and so on. So if you are interested in that, you can just click on the link below and keep reading a little more about that. Okay, yes. So finally, we're going to see the pitch and presentation of ideas using prototypes. We have been talking about the stages of having a prototype. And since the first stage, we know that we can present the idea to stakeholders and to clients, but what does it actually mean to present the idea? Why do you want to present the idea to other people besides you? Well, because you want to get a way to actually build your prototype. You need money for that. And most of the time, you're not able to have the money. So you need to go and search for investors. And this becomes a very formal presentation where you have to have data, information, and if possible, you should have the actual prototype with you because it can give a better effect with the potential investor and of course with potential clients. So just to remind you, because we're talking about business pitches, just remember that a pitch, it's a noun and it's about persuasion. It has several meanings. If you go to a dictionary, the first definition is not this one, but we're using this one right now. Just as a reminder, in last semester in the English Seminar 1, we talked about different uses of words and phrases, and one of them was about teaching. Okay, so going back to the class, just the definition, this is referred to a speech or act that attempts to persuade someone to buy or do something. And that's what we're trying to do when we are trying to pitch businesses. We're trying to launch the businesses and we're trying to convince. Persuade is, or persuasion is about convincing other people. And that's what we're trying to do right now. If we're talking about a prototype, it could be potential investors and it could also be potential investors from inside the company. Because if you have an idea of a new prototype, you need to sell that idea to the management of the company. Otherwise, they're not going to give you the okay to keep working on it and to go ahead and do the prototype and do the testings with the alpha and beta prototypes. You need the okay, you need the signatures of management, you need the signature from the CEO to say like, yeah, that looks like okay, go ahead. So you need persuasion. That's why this unit number 3 is made for in this English conversation seminar. So pitch and present, it's about that. The whole thing is about that. Persuade people by presenting the idea. You've got an idea for a new feature, app, website, product, whatever it is, you're ready to pitch it to stakeholders, but you don't know how to put together a compelling message, which that might be the case, then you need to remember that you are doing a presentation. So it's about knowing your audience, delivering on a clear mission and customer problem, all while backed up with an interactive prototype can help bring your stakeholders on board and achieve your goals. Yes. So I'm just going to present you a summarized version of what you're supposed to be doing when you pitch and present your prototype or your idea, which is this thing. You do consider or you are gonna work in a relevant way to your audience. Like I was saying, most of the time it could be just the management of the company, the higher hierarchy of the company, the CEO, the director of the company. So you need to be relevant to them. Remember that the vocabulary, the way that you present, is more formality. And of course, if you do have the prototype, the physical prototype with you, you should consider taking it to them. And this is usually presented using, of course, visual aids. Visual aids, like I was saying, should include your prototype. So it's good to have all of that with you. You should have a clear mission. This mission is referred to the mission from the company. The organization should have a mission. So you should be clear with your prototype. It should be in the same way as the mission of the company. Otherwise, they are not going to help you go ahead. And of course, if you are looking for new stakeholders, new investors, you need to consider the mission of their company because they need to link correctly. Otherwise, like I'm Like I was saying, they're not going to give us the money, or they're not going to give us the yes. So you need to be clear on that. Break down the problem you're solving, which means explain it correctly. Explain. Let your prototype do the talking, and that's what I was saying. You need to bring the prototype. That's why you, if it is possible, at least a little scale model for that presentation in order to pitch your idea. Yeah, and it's much, much better to have your prototype and let it do the talking. Let the people in that room that you are presenting, let the audience experience what the prototype is and how it works, because it's different from being talking about something that actually hold it, touch it, feel it. Way different. And if you already have some tests on it, some data, use that data. Get an overview of the user journey. Like I was saying, if you already have some data from it, you should use that data and explain. And that's why I'm using this picture over here at the left, because you could be talking about the data, the feedback that has been captured of the prototype, and showcase it. Show it. You're looking for the approval. So this is basically the process of doing the pitch and present. Remember that it's about persuading the investors, which can also be persuading customers. Yes? Any questions? Everything is clear?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you, Carmen. It feels like a big, big monologue. So that was all the information to be talked today, but we need to talk about an assignment that you're going to be doing. Since today's class, it was basically about me speaking. Like I was saying, it sort of looked like a monologue. You should expect that there's gonna be a lot of work on this. You're gonna do a reading and you're going to report it. We're gonna practice those abilities, those skills from your English language. You're going to do some reading. I'm going to upload an article. I'm gonna give you an article in, it's about prototypes. It's a tablet. I think it's a tablet prototype. So you're gonna be reading that article. You're going to understand it, and you're going to make a report about it. Basically, the report will be about a resume, but it will consider you a little thoughts. It's not like an essay. It will be like in between a resume and an essay. What I'm saying that you're gonna be doing a lot of work is because this article is about like 57 pages long. Yes, you're gonna be doing some reading in English. It's about time. You're about to finish this class and you haven't done real reading. So yeah, I'm giving you a lot of work. But not all of the pages have a lot of written information. Some of those pages have pictures and data collected in graphs. So it's very interesting. So you're gonna go ahead and read, like I'm saying. And hopefully we can get good reports from all of you. Any questions? No? Okay, so I believe that it was so clear, very, very clear. Hopefully. I really don't know if what you're saying or if what we're talking is that it was clear, but I hope that you understand the topic and what you're gonna be doing. And of course, you know that I am a professor that likes to give you 2 assignments every week. And what I'm gonna be doing is, in order for me to know that you understood what I was talking all of this time, so I'm gonna give you a discussion session. which will be the normal way to go every week. So I'm gonna give you a discussion session for this week about this class, about what you heard from this class, your opinion. And like I said, I'm gonna give you the article to read and to write a report. So you do have 2 assignments and it's just a week to complete those assignments. You should have any questions and you should contact me if you have any questions or advice. All right then?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right then, you're gonna be having a lot of work and hopefully you do consider the advice in time with, okay? So guys, I was glad to hear you, at least Carmen and Gilberto, I heard your voices, and most of you, I heard your voices when I was taking the attendance. Okay, so I'll see you later then. Have a nice, safe rest of the week. Remember to keep safe and enjoy your time. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
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 Bye.